Welcome to Viva La Visionary, the podcast that celebrates the innovative ideas and mindsets of entrepreneurs and visionaries. Join your host, Coach Bob Shenefelt, as he dives into inspiring stories and practical insights from trailblazers who are changing the game. Whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur or a seasoned leader, this show is your source for motivation and creativity. Let's embark on this exciting journey together.
Hi there, Coach Bob here, host of the podcast Viva La Visionary, and very excited to have my good friend and amazing visionary, Jon Loduca. Jon, how are you today?
Great. Glad to be here with you.
Awesome. We always have great conversation, and I don't often say always, but literally every time we've talked, I've had a great time. So glad to have you here. So first question, Jon, when did you realize that you were a visionary?
It's such a trick question. And I don't know if I ever really said, oh, I'm a visionary. I think I just thought I was a weirdo, and somebody said that makes you a visionary. I think as a little kid, I was doing entrepreneur stuff and wouldn't have called it that. I figured out trick-or-treating really young, and so I would do it in like May. And I was like, yeah, this is great, I'm cute as a little kid. I had one of those formaldehyde Halloween masks you buy at the grocery store and totally flammable or whatever it was, full of carcinogens. Go around the neighborhood and ask for candy, and made like mud sculptures and sold those and all that kind of jazz. I never thought of myself as an entrepreneur, never really named myself a visionary or anything like that. But I didn't fit in, conforming inside of somebody else's bureaucracy. I had a hell of a time with school. I had a hell of a time working for, companies where I wasn't leading. And so it just suddenly became abundantly clear I had to do my own thing, and everything made sense then.
Right.
And that, I guess, is the name of the game, right? You just, if you're a bit of an oddball, and I was always fascinated with futurist kind of stuff.
Right.
Not sci-fi per se, but like, where are things going? I was living, in the Silicon Valley in the mid 90s. So it was like, amazing to be there then, and became obsessed with futurist stuff.
Right.
And, I don't think I really got a grasp of what I was until I got my Colby.
Right. That's a huge point.
Your Colby? Like, do you remember like the way that felt?
So literally got the cassette from Kathy, and I'm like, how did she make this for me?
No kidding. I know. She called my Colby the Pioneer. And, the joke is always, how do you spot a pioneer? They're the ones with the arrows in their back.
Right. No, that's awesome. Yeah, that's a great point, that when I got my Colby, and I loved her simple explanation, and again, it's not the definition of who we are, but low fact find, low follow through me, high quick start. And I was like, yeah, isn't everybody? It's like, oh, no.
I got a little weepy. I was like, where the hell was this when I was a kid?
Yeah. Well, and now you can do that with kids. I've had both my kids go through it as well. Yeah. Oh, it's so cool.
Yeah, but I was young. I was like in my early 30s. It hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, oh God. I mean, the funniest thing was, so you know how she does. She feels like she's speaking directly to you. She starts it out the same way. Like, and no matter what your Colby, she'll say, "You're really unique," and she's talking to you yourself. And I was just wrapped. And I remember in the document, the PDF, it had like 30 jobs.
Right.
Well, I had done like 28 of them. I was like, holy crap, there's something to this. Yeah.
Well, and I don't love stereotyping or labels, but I remember the day when, Gino, I was his third client 25 years ago or 23 years ago, whatever it was. And he helped me to realize, because I was really questioning myself as an entrepreneur, as a leader, because I'm not good at managing, don't like details. He's like, you're a visionary. I'm like, okay, I get it. And he's like, and yet you have a place in business if you have the right structure, especially with an integrator. And it was like, the light bulb went out. I mean, that was a game changer for me. So I don't want to use visionary as an excuse, but it's also a learning opportunity.
No, that's great. I've often thought the word was a little highfalutin. I don't know if every senior leader, every CEO, every business owner is a visionary. I don't know if they all are. I think some of them are looking 6 feet in front of them. I don't know if they are really visionary. They're charged with setting vision, and I think they ought to be. It's in everyone's best interest, every single salary, every family attached to that business, that they are looking around corners and anticipating. I don't know if it's everybody's jam. You've built a community where I think visionaries are attracted to it because they're more visionary, than just the label or just the job title.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And a common theme, well, I'll get into that later. So what would you say, what are the roles of, what is our role as a visionary?
Well, I think as I'd said, our responsibility is to anticipate. And I think
Right.
because typically we're future focused, we're not particularly interested in the here and now. We should be, right? We should be perseverating on what's next. And we don't live in a time where, you can rest on your laurels. I talk about, process a lot in the community. And I say this often, like most of the brightest thinkers on the topic are dead.
Right.
They thought and contributed at a time when the world moved very slowly. And so despite the merits of their contribution to the canon, not really, you can really apply a lot of that because it's like a completely different world we live in. I think this technology world is insidious in the ever increasing pace of our lives. If you're not anticipating 5 years, 10 years in the future, you're going to get caught napping.
Right.
And things happen, I think, faster. And I think it's incumbent upon the visionary to imagine a future. And I also think that they're galvanizers, I think, oftentimes to use. The working genius is another neat, tool to use. I think visionaries are to, galvanize and unify and command the imagination of an audience. They're usually good
Right.
salespeople, and also the team, and get them behind them, because audacity is kind of the necessity these days.
I like that. Interesting. Very cool. And then, so shifting gears a little bit, I like to have a simple little question, but why are you on this planet, John? What are you here for? What are you going to be remembered for?
To love and create.
Love it. And less is more. Very cool. Deep down, that's what it is. It's so often that when I used to have fun as a visionary when I started my business, and then I would hit that ceiling of complexity, and then I was in the business, and being in is no fun. And so, but to get down to the real deep thing, and it's not just in our business, but in our life, I love that.
Yeah. I've gotten into a jag of reading Isaacson's biographies. I just finished Musk, and I'm rereading Jobs, and it's fun to read about these titans and
Right.
these extraordinary, examples of the visionary persona. And it's a bit sociopathic with those two.
Right.
They're out on the very frontiers of society. They're practically feral.
Right.
And the things that they do, you can see they pop around because they're so perseverating on the future that they don't even have a whole lot of energy or even respect for the very here and now.
Right.
And I was just reading chapters about the launch of the Mac and the way that Steve Jobs was pushing and pushing and pushing, and then just left the team so tattered. And it's just like Elon. I mean, he's just a machine and obsessed with the future and on to the next thing and on to the next thing. It's fascinating.
Well, and it's interesting. I think a lot of visionaries do that in their lives, and so including their family and their self. If they're so driven and so thinking about the future, what about me here right now and you and I here right now?
No kidding. No
That's
kidding.
that's
And,
that's an opportunity,
it conspires against peace.
right?
And I think that that's maybe the trade-off is
So that's
we don't get to do that.
interesting. Yeah, I feel like, okay, yes, it is looking forward, anticipating, galvanizing. I agree with all that. And I think in this world, especially with things moving so fast, it is peace and joy and freedom, which sometimes a lot of us forget. I know I have in the past. It's even my wife just going, "Are you having fun?" I'm like, "Yes, I am." And she's like, "Okay, that doesn't sound like it." So getting back to being present is so huge.
Yeah, I don't know if it's in the cards for me all the time, though. I kind of given
I'm
up
not
the
saying all
idea.
the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I like laying in the pool and having a cocktail with an umbrella in it, like the next guy. But I don't know if it's my jam to be that comfortable. I kind of thrive in the uncertainty, and I like the pace. There's a balance for me, though. There's, manic and, oh my God, where are my keys? Like I'm just going too much too fast.
Right.
Which city am I in? That kind of crap. That was last year. It was just, manic. And then there's that slow feeling, and I start getting, I don't know about you, I get paranoid when things are slow.
Oh, yeah. When I talk about slowing down, I'm talking about for minutes.
Oh yeah. Okay. Well then,
No,
yeah.
and again, I love a little nap. I love being on the beach with a margarita, but yeah, I can't even do that long. But it's literally
That was perfect.
before you and I get on a call, just to spend a couple minutes just being grateful and just kind of what could this look like, in wonder, this conversation. And then again, in the past, I would run from one meeting or Zoom to the next.
Yeah.
And I didn't download and think about the magic that we co-created together. So that's, when I say slow down, it's literally 3 to 5 minutes a couple times a day. And I'm like, woo!
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, I get that. I think I think that is a truism. Like we just kind of race off to the next thing. I was remarking with my wife that we had built so much intellectual property with our other business, Wisdom Link.
Right.
And we were just in this sort of like on to the next thing, on to the next thing. And we get to go in the archive every once in a while. I did that, at your thing. And it
Right.
was like, some of this stuff's pretty good. And we just
Right.
moved on to the next thing and on to the next and didn't savor it as much. Yeah, I worked for a guy once and he said, well, you can rest when you're dead. And that was his expression for everything.
Right.
And I thought, boy, that's empty. I don't know if I want to share that vision. But
Right.
I do activate in a fight, Bob. So I like it just a touch manic.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So tell me a little bit about Playbook Builder. I know a lot about it, but in the simplest terms, what is Playbook Builder? And so if you could explain that a little bit.
Playbook Builder is what it does is it helps capture and leverage company wisdom. And the previous company that I'd owned was Intellectual Capital. So I built a career, boy, was it ever neat. And I was so fortunate to do it. I was helicoptered in to interview really successful entrepreneurs and help them deconstruct how their values drove choice making and build predictive models, help them build essentially processes that could scale them.
Right.
Like a ghostwriter might do, but the work product was different. And along the way, because I'm not super bright, I realized, oh my God, we should film them. That would be amazing. We could have the narrative next to the document, and boy, what a rich training and product that you could provide. And these could be licensed, they could be used internally, they could be used for valuation. So Playbook Builder was born pretty humble. Or we bootstrapped this thing and knocked around with it for a while, and it took off. But basically, imagine a place, one source of truth. Technically, you call it a knowledge management and training tool, where the team's common organizational wisdom how-to manuals could all live, but they could walk and talk, and they could be sourced and viewed. We use a lot of AI to accelerate content development. If you ask me, though, that's just what it does. What it delivers is so neat. We get to uplift the team. We get to make companies resilient. We get to have a real, meaningful, maybe even legacy impacting valuation on the business, so that when the business is sold, it could really be life-changing wealth for the founders and their families. We can make them go fast. We can make them bulletproof. I mean, it's a joy to do that. I'm very passionate about small business.
Right, I know.
Small town. I grew up in big towns, and I've lived in big towns most of my life. When we started having children, I moved to this sweet little town on the west side of Michigan. And I mean, I look out my window, and these are like, family businesses, Main Street businesses, and they're often the kinds that we serve. The HVAC guy around the corner with 30 employees. And I think, in many ways, I'm called to serve those guys to the best of my ability. And so I think if you burned Playbook Builder to the ground, I would do something else in the same vein.
Right.
I'm attracted to people. I love lifting up the really wonderful uniqueness in every company, and I would just find another expression for doing that. But Playbook Builder is a marvelous vehicle for it. It really is.
I love it.
Serve that way. It's been a blast. It still is.
No, I appreciate it. And for me, I have a hard time just reading a piece of paper or a 40-page piece of paper. So to watch it and then to empower people to keep improving on it is great. And you're a great speaker. I've seen you speak many times. And one of the times I went to one of your talks, it was about process. I'm like, okay, I don't care about that, but I want to go see Jon.
I saw you in the back in IT school. I was like, what the hell are you doing here?
So, but I learned a lot. And one of the things, if you can also share, what is my role or our role as a visionary in process? Because walking into that, I'm like, again, that's my team, but you gave me a few ahas on my role as a visionary. So can you explain what is my role as a visionary in the process? About process?
Well, it kind of depends. I mean, if you get brought in as an executive, this is a little different. But for a lot of small businesses, they were a technician first and then started peeling off the things they don't do well until finally they end up having to peel off the things that they did do well, until basically they're sort of laid bare. They're merely the visionary now. They have a different kind of a role than meeting with clients or handling the work product itself. And so oftentimes knowledge transfers to juniors is lumpy and slow and inefficient.
Right.
And what breaks everybody's heart is you bring in a young person, you pour into them like a son or a daughter, and they don't work out. Either they're a little shit and they take off with half your book of business, or they don't work out because they can't execute. Whatever the reasons are, there's just almost a tragic loss. I see that happening where sometimes the leader even becomes a little jaded and cynical for the next hires because they've been wounded by this. So what Playbook Builder looks at is that intellectual property in the head of the visionary and other people on the team. Mostly you're renting it. You don't actually have your hands on it. And until you do, it's not yours. It is theirs. And they'll leave with it when they exit, or it can get lost. But for every visionary that wants to say a hearty yes to growth, they want to be bulletproof. and
Right.
say, yes to audacity, big growth goals, adding a bunch of new people, acquiring other businesses, or having a big healthy exit, like all of the fun and exciting stuff that visionaries want to do. There's this dirty little secret, and that is you can't just run like 100 miles an hour and leave your team behind. You have to bring everybody with you. There's that, what is that? I think it's an African saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, bring others. And so that's what Playbook Builder's for, is to bring everybody along. What I've learned, though, is it's not just top down. There's wisdom all over the organization. It's
Absolutely.
like everybody's under the furniture. It's everywhere.
Right.
Somebody's over there like a gem working in the accounting department, and they're like a wizard with your books. What happens when they retire or decide to take care of their mother who's sick or whatever? You could lose a lot of wonderful stuff. It also is a neat way to lift up your people, just to accentuate them and make the organization feel like a we instead of a you do what I say, which is most small businesses. It's marvelous in that regard. I think for the visionary, it's freedom, it's speed, and it's resilience. I think those things are sexy as hell. Like, wow, I want to go bang into stuff and not die.
Love that.
That's what process can do for them.
Well, one of the things that I heard from one of your talks, might have been that same one, was that we have this uniqueness, this fun, and again, a lot of things you already talked about, that audacity. And yet, as we put process in place, and we're so often people focused on people, process, and structure, the visionary kind of gets bored, lets go of the vine, goes to do other things. And what I heard you say, when we're brought back into or look at the business, it's like we're not doing some of the cool, wacky shit that got us to where we were. So to make sure we don't lose that, I think is huge. So if you can comment on that, because I got a lot of visionaries say, "Oh, I don't have a process." Sure, we do. And it might be something unique and different. And so to include us in the process, especially if it's just me talking as opposed to typing, that works.
No, it's marvelous. I actually really appreciate, there's a lot inside of that question. So my business, before Playbook Builder, this consulting company, my clients were very successful, wealthy, 1%ers who had 25, 30 years of industry experience. And many of them had a couple of choices. They could have the equivalent of a business affair, like stepping out in the marriage and dating somebody half their age. Instead, it would be a new business. It would be a new venture. It'd be like, ooh, but she's perfect. She doesn't. There's not all the baggage. I could just, we could just travel, pick up, and go anywhere. Like the kind of crap you hear your buddies talking about. You're like, bro, what are you doing? And they were doing it with another business because it didn't have all the noise and all the encumbrances. They would come to me and sort of dance with these ideas, or they were trying to double down and kind of reinvent and storytell what was really differentiated about them. And really, I think it's for a highly commoditized business. Oh, we're an HVAC company, or we're a financial advisory team. How do you find what's unique? And what we looked at was the values of the place are kind of like fingerprints on a crime scene. Like the values inform a whole host of choices. What's in the refrigerator, who we hire, what things we say yes and no to, everything. Like almost like the brand writ large all throughout the organization. And once that's known, the company, by teasing that out and seeing those things expressed in process, can kind of double down on what makes them unique. So you say, how do we bring the visionary back in to create some crazy? Well, create what kind of crazy? Let's take this thing that works so well and 10 times it. That's a kind of crazy you can say yes to if you know what the parameters are. I talk about having processes kind of like my son driving. Like my son can drive a car. He can turn the key and drive anywhere he wants to go. He has no idea how a car works. He's never lifted the hood. I have to show him what all these things do because he can't tune it up. He can't fix it if it breaks. He's just the driver. Processes like that, like if you don't know what you have in there, you don't understand the implications of changing things, adding a person, saying yes to some kind of growth strategy, second order, third order consequences. Like you have to be able to see everything in order to be able to tinker. And I think for a lot of business owners, they get bored, they blow shit up, and then they get frustrated and they blame everyone. And instead it's like, let's lock it down so it's resilient, and then let's stress test. Let's take it on the freeway and see what it can do. And I think that's a joy for a lot of entrepreneurs, is full ownership of that business and seeing their vision expressed through everyone. Their vision expressed, their values expressed, their wisdom expressed in the organization. I think that's a joy for many of them.
Right. Oh, that's awesome. Very cool. Yeah, I love that. And again, something else I got from one of your talks is that if you bounce some of the processes off me as the visionary, I have a very short attention span. But if it isn't, if I can't hear it simply, then probably other people can't either. So I took that to heart, and I did that in one of my businesses where I would go through and say, all right, well, how do you do things? Okay, well, what would you do different? People are like, oh, it would do this, this, and this. Check that out and empower them. But again, rather than me running from it, for me to look and go, well, you missed the main point. Or, I think a lot of us visionaries, we see gaps in process.
Totally.
We're not good at setting them up or managing the process, but we see gaps. So any comments?
That is an unbelievable truth, and it's something that's, I don't know, I don't get to talk about it enough, but you're bringing up an interesting point. Like, for the guy sitting in the back on his phone, total ADD, doesn't have any patience with how the thing gets built, also has the most irritating ability to go, that's off by a micron. That's always what the visionary can do. It's funny. It's like almost like they can hear music or something. They can go, that note is off or something.
Right.
It's really unbelievable. I think it's, we talk about visionary bashing, you and I.
Yeah.
And it's a thing, It's like, oh, put him in the corner. He's just he did his thing. He got the thing stood up. Now he's just a terrorist in the organization.
There goes John again. Right.
Put him in the closet. Yeah, totally. Why don't you go, take up pickleball?
Right.
But that active ingredient of daring and risk-taking, that keeps a business on its toes and keeps it healthy. And that sensitivity to the fidelity, the small deviations of character or values or just simple gaps in thinking, it's uncanny what visionaries can do. It unnerves everyone. They're like, you haven't even been listening to our conversation. How did you? But they often can. It's funny. I think everybody listening to this would go, yeah, I'm usually the stinker who can do that. In a flyby, like a drive-by shooting, ba, 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 ba. They just off again and then leave everybody reeling. Yeah.
Well, at one of our summits, we had Dr. Doug Brackman for Driven, and he talked about a lot of us visionaries are intensely present for short periods. And so again, if we can bomb in, and it sometimes, again, may seem like we're not fully present, but we bomb in and then we leave. And in my first business, I would say we used to have large mailings that would come in, and I'm like, yeah, but this could go wrong. They're like, dude, we got it covered. And then something would happen. I'm like, see? And they're like, well, it's a perfect storm. I'm like, yeah, but that's why we have process, is to avoid that perfect storm. And so that was a huge opportunity for us to grow, where we, again, not that I knew all the process, but I'm just kind of like, okay, we're missing something here. And that was hugely valuable.
I don't know if this is visionary specific, but I think when you are an entrepreneur of any stripe, you don't get paid for trying hard. So their learning curve is steep and it's fast. Like, if you get paid to kind of get it sort of right, you don't learn as quickly. But when you get your hand cut off, man, you don't make that mistake ever again. It's kind of like, and it's correlated also to decision making. I think it's the speed and the volume of decisions that the business owner has to make. It's unbelievable, the kinds of decisions, and they get a fact pattern built, essentially. It's like Darwin, those species that evolve really fast are the ones that have a lot of offspring, a lot of mutations. So when you're the one guy trying to stand up a business and your hands are in all sorts of stuff before you're building a team around you, you know pretty well how most things go, and you've had a lot of scar tissue learning, and I think that makes it a little faster, a little touch. I think what's a fascinating chapter, and I think you and I are getting to an age where this is happening, is not that we're obsolete, but that we have to continue to get outside of our comfort zone. We built those mental patterns, those frameworks. They become a liability. And so what's fascinating, and I've been just really intrigued by, is the line between becoming wise and seeing fact patterns and recognizing when you are outside the bounds. You have to defer to others.
Right.
That's interesting to me because it presents like a dichotomy of dynamic inside the same person.
Right.
Openness and flexibility, and then a real rigidity because you've already touched that stove 50 times. So I'm learning how to think differently now at this age, in this stage.
Right.
Because I've grown outside my comfort zone. I have different kinds of problems I'd hoped I'd always have, and requiring a different set of tools for me. I can't look just backwards and merely draw upon the previous experiences. Yeah, it's an interesting chapter that way.
Oh, I love that. When you said, I thought I heard you say something about that we usually know how we did in the past, and I get that, but I think what you're also capturing the wisdom is why we do it. And so you capture that. That's amazing.
Yeah, but if you consider the pace of change, 50 years ago, that would be kick-ass. I mean, 50 years ago, the pace of change wasn't so brisk, and so you could draw upon a career and say, well, I learned this when I was in my 20s, and then I practiced it in my 40s and perfected it in my 50s, and I really am batting 1,000 now. I know what I'm doing. This time we live in is, one of those epochal changes. our era gets a capital letter, like the Renaissance or the Enlightenment, like it's transformational.
Right.
And so we can't just bring frameworks from the past and apply them into the era we live in.
Right.
That's a trap. I saw grown men my age who stopped reading books.
Huh.
They had a thesis in their 40s. They built a business around it. They were so busy trying to get it stood up and to be successful and prove that it worked indeed. They failed to recognize that they were obsolete.
Right.
They
Interesting.
missed the changes. They failed to take account. And it's a big danger, I think, when you're, if you're thoughtful about your thinking, if you're, I think it's called epistemological in your thinking about your thinking, you can get a little wrapped around your own axle. It's a fine balance of looking outside while you're sensitive to what your inner stuff is going on. But the outside stuff is moving exponentially.
It's amazing. Right.
Yeah. I mean, if you ask about future stuff as a visionary, you have to tell the cold, unvarnished truth that we're in uncharted territory for mankind, for the whole species. Yeah.
Which gets me excited, actually.
Tell me more about that. What has got you excited about it?
Well, you mentioned learning. I love to learn. And as we were talking before we came on, it's, learning to embrace the unknown. And when I embrace that, that's when I learn, because I don't know everything at all. I mean, I know certain things and I know kind of who I am, but learning I actually love, and going into the unknown. And we mentioned Ram Dass calls it the edge of mystery. To look forward to that, as opposed to, oh shit, I don't know how this is going to go with John, or is he going to sign up for this, or is he going to refer me? It's like, you know what, with wonder and curiosity. And so, here's our opportunity, because like you said, it is unknown. And this is the age of the visionary, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I appreciate that very much. And there is a fun in it. I think that I find there's some strain because I have children. And so in my lifetime, like, not that it won't impact me, it will, but I just kind of, Gen X and pretty hardy. And, we were underparented. We know how to break into a house. Like, we know how to do it. And my parents aren't home. I'm sure we can get in here. I think that in trying to read the future and anticipating where the puck is headed for our children puts me in a little bit more stress. To be candid and very transparent with you, I love to present this front like I've got this thesis and I totally understand it. I honestly, and I'll say this, I hope it doesn't offend anyone, I think anybody who says that is full of it. Not accusing anyone, the attitude about it can be positive. But I think it's so broad, a range of scenarios. Anyone who has one that they're sure is going to unfold is probably going to get a little surprised. I think it's an immature way of dealing with the stress of uncertainty. It is uncertain. It can make us nervous. The visionary, at least, lives on the ball of their feet. You've been living kind of shuffling and shuckling, or whatever that word is, gaining traction on a slippery slope. You've been doing that since you became an entrepreneur. But I recognize there are others that won't make the transitions as easily. I worry about them.
Totally agree. And that's where my why is to elevate the entrepreneurial spirit. And that's not just with visionaries, it's with our employees, with my kids. And it doesn't mean I'm trying to turn them into a visionary, but what is vision, and how do you see your job or life after school or whatever? And most people are like, what are you talking about? It's like to slow down and think about that, and then to take action toward it, and then to come up for air and see how I'm doing. So it's not that they're visionaries, but that it's okay to have vision. It's okay to fall on our face and get back up.
Yeah, I think that's marvelous. And I think that is an adaptive strength. I think that's an advantage from way, way back, but entrepreneurs practice it all the time.
Absolutely. So what's one lesson you've learned as a visionary, either personally or professionally, that when you made this shift or had changed this attitude or behavior that really kind of catapulted you to the next level? So what's a lesson learned you've had as a visionary?
I've got a tremendous amount of wisdom, but it wasn't mine. I was the beneficiary of Dan Sullivan's wisdom. And so unlike a lot of entrepreneurs, I think, that joined that program and had 25 years of doing what they did, and Dan spoke into them, I was young and built a business informed by Dan's wisdom. So when I espouse a lot of the things that I've incorporated into what I believe and what I do, I was his, I don't even know what you'd call it, like I was testing those ideas as a brand spanking newbie.
Right.
And one of the ones that I think has served me the best is that value is inherently subjective. And so this respect for the interpretation of value from the consumer's perspective has imposed a radical sense of empathy on me. Really lean in and listen, to really have a heart for the people I serve, and really to get out of my own interpretations, the biased confirmations, the I've had Playbook Builder for a long time, and I can whiz around through the platform. I'll give you an example. And I have to really, really work to remember what it's like not to know the platform.
Right.
And so I am, I still connect with customers. I still engage with them because I really still am learning from them.
Right.
And still listening intently. But I learned that from Dan. It probably saved me, it made me millions of dollars, and it probably saved me from losing an equal amount. I think that the contract of capitalism is that value is inherently subjective. So you're always working in accord with someone who decides if your thesis is right. You can't just be like, I built this in my mom's basement and I'm sure it's awesome. It doesn't work that way. You get your crap beat out of you out in the marketplace, but that's the only place it matters.
Right.
And I learned that a long time ago. And so that's been a hallmark of the way I pursued my business and my whole career. I think that a strong sense of identity tempered with a humility is a probable thing for me. Respectful of the people who bring complementary skills. I'm such an extreme, like Colby. I'm handicapped, really. And so while I might have a healthy dosing, in fact, like maybe extra on one edge of the spectrum, I'm equally deficient over here. So I've always had a staff I haven't opened my own mail 15 years. And that's not because I think I'm cool. People in my little town, they'll get, my admin will coordinate. It's not because I'm cool or I'm showboating. Shit, I can't do time zone math. Like I just can't. Like I'm counting on my fingers. What time is it in Australia? Like I really can't do it. I show up wrong. I used to do it, I delegate a lot of things. So that's another one, is that humility around the fact that someone absolutely loves to clean my house. It ain't me, but there's somebody out there that finds joy and integrity in that work. And why would I deny them the opportunity? So there's things I delegate. And I learned that a long time ago. That's a key. Gosh, Bob, there's so much. I think we have an unfair advantage in many regards because that total ownership, when you are it tightens your crap up real quick. It's to blame. So, you read, you investigate, you watch podcasts, you enlist the help of others because there's certainly no place to go. You just can't kick the cat and blame the world. You're accountable. And so you take the full mantle of responsibility on, which, I'd hope people would do as a business leader. You have to operate with a respect for your limits.
Right. No, I love that.
Appreciation for others' gifts. So, again, I'm such a shill for strategic coach. It's so funny.
Right.
But unique ability teams. Someone loves to do that, and it ain't me, but I'm going to stay in my lane and let them do theirs. Yeah.
Right. I love that. So what's one thing that you're working on now on either an opportunity or an issue, either personally or professionally as a visionary that you're facing yourself with?
How much time do we have for this call? I'm a work in progress like you are, and I like that we're friends, in that way. And yeah, I've outgrown some of my skills. And so what I'm confronted by is the need to develop a new set of habits and skills for this thing that I gave rise to. And it's everyone's wish, you'd wing it, you'd figure it out, and then it would work. And Playbook Builder's arc is moving at such a pace now that it's really been a delight, but it is asking other things of me. And I've always wanted to be in that room, and now I'm in there. And so that's a little scary and exciting. Right. I've had to say no. I've had to make no the new sexy. I've had to just basically Heisman friends, Heisman fun, Heisman intriguing and flattering opportunities because I have to stay in this focused place. That's new. I'm like at the buffet line of fun, and I have not been able to say yes to that. That's been an interesting new discipline for me.
Right.
What else is true about what's going on? Honestly, Bob, I think part of it is glimpsing mortality.
Right. I can appreciate that.
I got involved with AI in 2016. I sat on the board of an AI firm, and a little startup, but it was enough to get my feet wet and started looking into it. And then I got a chance to give a TED Talk, and I was really immersed in the AI thing. And so I went down the rabbit hole, and it was pretty daunting to see what was possible in 2016. And I grapple with the implications of it. We are cautiously and conservatively incorporating AI into Playbook Builder. But my big focus for my entire career has been to lift up the uniqueness inside of organizations to make them resilient and differentiated, so they could compete on their uniques, to use the EOS jargon, really, so that they can't be commoditized so easily. And AI's prowess at doing that very thing is just wild. So I do continue to grapple with the implications Not that I am a creator of AI, we are merely leveraging it, but nonetheless, I'm participating in that. It's a question.
Right.
Where is all this headed? I wasn't terribly concerned until I saw the Tesla robots. I kind of anticipated if you do this intellectually or physically, I kind of figured you're going to get gobbled up by machines. I mean, it's just in necessity, right? Like if you're processing paperwork, you're doing taxes, like what do you think is going to happen? All that stuff is algorithmic. But do you remember Daniel Pink in A Whole New Mind? Do you remember that book?
Yep.
I love that book. And Dan Pink is like the guy who, I can't even believe that. I mean, he'll like reply to an email. Like he's a great dude.
Really?
And yeah, we had a back and forth like shit. I don't know when it was, mid 2000s. I mean, he's an amazing guy. And that left a mark on me. He had said, just to sum up the book if you haven't read it, an MFA will be the new MBA. So a Master of Fine Arts will effectively be the way that this new era is going to demand, because the algorithmic thinking is going to get delegated to computers.
Right.
And I was like, shit, he wrote that book like 20 years ago.
Yep.
And of course he saw it right. And holistic thinking, creative thinking, visionary, algorithmic style thinking, high EQ, emotional intelligence, this kind of stuff would become the nature of things. I'm a little intimidated by some of the stuff I've seen that is encroaching into domains that I thought were sacred. Like I knew desktop AI would be a thing. I didn't know robots would be coming so fast.
Right.
So to be candid and not dour, I think there's a new era that's ushering in. I'm trying to do some meaning making from what it implies, and I'm grappling with that right now, this chapter. I'm like, where is this headed? And I wonder what some of the scenarios look like. Mark Dispenza, who's an EOS implementer and a good guy and a good friend, he recommended a book that I just thought was marvelous. I'll pass this along to your listeners. It's called Life 3.0 by a fellow named Max Tegmark. Max does a really nice job of providing kind of some scenario painting for where AI might impact humanity. And he doesn't take sides so much as he provides a science-backed interpretation of where it may go. And so the book is divided into various scenarios so that he doesn't necessarily say, I know where things are headed. He just says, these are some of the things that could happen. And it's fascinating, but it's going to be transformational at a level that, is probably not going to go at the pace where we could go, I had a computer, and then I had a laptop, then I had an iPhone. It's not going to be like that.
Right.
It's going to be like I drove to work and then I teleported. It's going to be wild. Yeah. So I'm kind of there. So you're asking me those questions.
Sure.
My own age, my own business, this new chapter, this exciting new chapter for me, the implications of the times we live in, and my role in it. And I don't grandstand like I'm a big deal or a big player, big thinker, or anything, but I have a chance to make a difference.
Right.
And
And you are.
Others with it. I realize if I'm 10 miles up the road and somebody's 5, I don't have a responsibility to them, but I feel like I do. I feel like my job is to love and create. So I create so that I can protect my HVAC guy in my neighborhood, because there's 40 families in there, and all their kids, and I can do my thing to protect them. I'm going to do it.
Right.
That emboldens me, Bob, actually, cause I was never that way. And I've become more cause, and not like standing out in a street corner with a picket sign, but I have a bigger purpose than just my own wealth or my own proving my thesis anymore. I actually am trying to do something. Gosh, you're getting a lot out of me today. I'm trying to do something bigger and important. And if I get to use my time that way, I will. I had a terrible death in the family, and would ever punctuate how little time we have for me. And those things really put a exclamation point on your thinking.
Right. Time is precious, that's for sure.
Precious, Bob.
Right.
And in a time where things are changing and so many folks don't even know what is going on, it's like, it's a responsibility. And so I feel charged with that. It's wonderful. It's bringing out the best in me. I'm not so much of a selfish prick. I'm much more, thoughtful about that empathy thing, because it's focusing me in that regard. But I don't have a clear thesis. And so, leadership isn't about being right. It's about being sure.
Right.
Being right is like a happy accident. Like Fortune 500 CEOs, all they have to be right is about 52% of the time. But they sure as hell can't be like, I don't know. Like, that's not an answer you can give. So I'm grappling with the I don't know part of this window.
Yeah. I appreciate that.
Do you see what I mean with that?
Oh, no, I do. And I appreciate that. And so I could go one of two ways. I could go down the fear of and the conspiracy that the robots are going to take over the world, and they might. And so, but I'm going with the faith and belief it's all going to work out the way it can. And all I can control is myself and how I show up. And so, and then it's kind of hope for the best.
What if it isn't binary? What if it isn't a black and white scenario? What are
Yeah,
the other options?
it probably isn't, but so, and I don't know other than again just keep learning. And again, my thing is to my why is to create experience and spread peace, joy, and freedom. And so that's all I can really do is it maybe influence you a little bit. And again, we're learning together, co-creating with my kids, and just enjoying each day because, like you said, life can be short, and we don't know what's going in. But I am going in with a lot of faith and optimism. And my last thought before I ask you the last question is Ram Dass saying that I'm on the edge of uncertainty. I'm sorry, on the edge of mystery, which is uncertain. When we have real faith, when we step over that line, there's either going to be, we have faith, there's going to be solid ground that we're going to land on, or we're going to learn how to fly. Yeah. And so that really kind of sums it up for me that I don't know what's going to happen next. And I don't know if I'm sure, but I'm sure that if I am present and I be who I am, that it's gonna work out, whatever that means. And I don't know what that means, but enjoying today is gonna, I think, a great way for me to have that kind of an outcome.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I get that. I think Einstein said it really well and probably best. He said the most important question everyone has to answer for themselves is the universe friendly or not?
Right. Interesting. Yeah.
And that's that question. What's on the other side of the uncertainty?
Right. Interesting. Well, I'm glad I'm alive to figure it out. And with people like you, my last question, which you were very influential on, as we were having great conversations about visionaries, and it's not that it's the victim mode, but often a lot of visionaries have been kind of put aside, whether we put ourselves aside or process does or whatever it might be. And so as we were talking about that, I believe you came up with, and you said, Viva La Visionary. And boy, did that resonate with me. And it resonated with our whole visionary forum. And so that's been our rally cry for a year. So what does Viva La Visionary mean to you?
It really means to celebrate the exotic and wild and weird,
right.
And that contribution that is the active ingredient for change and growth. If it weren't for those people brave enough to be themselves right. And to lead from that place of uncertainty, nothing would change. It would be a bleak, gray, Orwellian kind of world. But thank God for the people with the guts to do it. That's Viva La Visionary to me. And it was in response to the idea of just that crushing feeling that in order to have a healthy business, even the visionary must conform, and it's so backwards. It couldn't be more wrong. Yeah. It's the thing that leads to obsolescence is actually conforming. And so there needs to be a healthy respect between the two parties. They can cohabitate.
Absolutely.
There needs to be mutual respect, and it's not always the case. Sometimes the visionary is indeed a terrorist without a lot of respect for the people on the team, but we are the active ingredient for the economy.
Love that.
Yeah. So I do celebrate the visionary, and long live the visionary, because in a time of great change, it will be these people.
Right.
All of the folks that sit in that community that you've created, they're going to be the ones pioneering new pathways in the darkness. It's a marvelous responsibility. It's a heady responsibility.
It is. And again, it's heady, and there's some weight to it, but it's also, kind of like the unknown. And it's like, I'm excited about adding value to that. And again, I don't have all the answers, but I'm excited to learn with you and with others. So thank you for your time. Thank you for the phrase, Viva La Visionary. I say it proudly. And any final thoughts? Any final thoughts for the visionaries out there? I appreciate your time.
I know that a lot of the folks listening to this will be my friends in the forum, but I also know that a lot of folks will be wondering what's the program like. And I'll just attest to the fact that it's one of the most inclusive, positive, forward-thinking groups for this unique, community of visionaries. It's for you. If you're listening to this, you're attracted to the visionary ideas and anything that I was talking about or any of Bob's other guests, check it out. It's really cool. I'll attest to the fact that I was skeptical and wondered what I would think, and I think it's a marvelous program and a truly a testament to Bob's ability to facilitate real transparency and growth. I highly recommend it. So I'll always leave with a commercial for you, Bob, because I love it. I love what you're doing. But thank you for having me. It was a pleasure to be here with you.
Awesome. Great. Have a great day. Peace.
Thank you for tuning in to Viva La Visionary. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and found inspiration in our guest stories. If you loved what you heard, please subscribe, rate, and share the podcast with fellow dreamers and doers. Join us next time as we continue to explore the limitless possibilities of visionary thinking. Until then, keep dreaming big and taking action. Your vision matters.